Hey there. So we've got the full moon coming up. It's a massive full moon, and lots of people are talking about it in quite fearful ways. And I can see why, because it's got such big energies. In this video, what I'm going to do is take a much deeper look at this full moon, have a look at the planetary patterns holding it together. And I also want to comment a little bit on the midpoints. You know, there's some very interesting planetary alignments right now. And I always think the midpoints between things are really, really strong. You know, they're really giving us a hint of how we can resolve our astrology. After that, I'm also going to be looking at the asteroids, and there's a dwarf planet as well that is also playing into the same degrees as this full moon. So we've got an even deeper understanding, and I'm also checking out some Sabian symbols and chucking in the galactic center as well. So this full moon is going to be explored from at least 4 different ways. And my aim here is to help you understand it so that as you're coming into this time, you're not flawed by the energy. I'm not going to lie. I think it's massive. We are living in a world right now that feels quite tumultuous, you know, on the back end of the election in America. There's stuff going on in Spain. There's massive riots going on over there. You know, there's lots of different things in lots of different places that I'm aware of where there's masses of discontent and a real stirring around the world. So, yeah, this video is really here to help you understand how you might choose to manage your energy, how you might want to focus the energy so that you can make the most of this and not get too swept into the whole process. These are times when people are absolutely rigid and fixed in their thinking. So hopefully that will be helpful. I will actually stick on the end of this some other comments that I made on my weekly forecast earlier today, which I released, where I did also talk about the full moon and also how it relates to Donald Trump's chart, JD Vance's chart, and also Israel's chart. Their charts absolutely fit in with this full moon. And so it really wouldn't surprise me if as the full moon comes in and we all experience different emotions and different experiences, it wouldn't surprise me if the outer world, the world that we hear about on the news or through social media, if those people and Israel are not somehow involved in the developing stories and pictures coming up. So before I get going, I just want to say my name's Louisa. This is Feel Good Astrology. The whole idea of this is to give you tools and hopefully insights to help you feel better about yourself and in context with the world, you know, understand your place in the world a little bit, how things are kind of interacting together. Really, I just want people to have options to feel freer, to create more space for themselves so that there is the sense that there are possibilities. I know things can get quite overwhelming, especially at the time of a full moon. So if you're new here, thank you so much. If you like this, please do subscribe. If you've come back, thank you so much for your support. And that brings me on to the first thing I really want to share with you before I look at any charts. And that is just to say thank you to everybody that supports this channel. Your love and support really means a lot to me. This list is growing every week, and you know, it really gives me the impetus and the energy to keep doing what I do, which is exploring the planets in a way that interests me. You know, I just like the more you look, the more you want to look. I mean, it's crazy. It's kind of addictive. So there you go. That's a little bit about me and the channel, but thank you so very much to everybody who supports in all of the different ways that you do. I really appreciate you. So let's have a look at this full moon then. Oh, flipping heck. Here it is. So this is the chart for the full moon. Now, I've put this in the UK time zone. I sit in the UK time zone. I'm actually a little bit north of Lisbon in Portugal, but we are in the same time zone as London and the UK of England, you know, if you don't know that. We're also the midpoint between all the different time zones across the world. So, you know, giving this particular chart is, I think, a midpoint for everybody. You know, if you are over in Hawaii or over in New Zealand, you know, there is quite a big time difference. And if you want to put this into your local time, I recommend going to timeanddate.com and clicking on their sun and moon tab, dropping it down to where it says moon phases, and it will tell you the exact time of the full moon for you. wherever you are in the world in your real time. But anyway, as we're looking at this, what you can see here, hopefully, is that the moon in Taurus is in a conjunction with Uranus, and Uranus is retrograde. There's just over a degree of difference between these two planets. So they are really, really close. And at the time of the full moon, that moon, which if you think about the moon, it's receptive, it kind of picks up the flavor. I think of the moon a little bit like tofu. Tofu absorbs all the flavors around it. And so this moon is absolutely Uranian in energy. It is going to have the energy of shock, surprise, bewilderment, overwhelm. Uranus is a higher harmonic from Mercury. They're both known as sort of mental planets, not mental as in like crazy, but hey, that does also work. But they are planets of the mind, planets of communication, thinking, like words and everything that we're sharing. It's the communication. So I really see that Mercury is a terrestrial form of thinking and sharing information, and very much delivering that information. And then Uranus is like the higher harmonic, so it's etheric, it's telepathic. Some people might think that Uranus is a bit like the Akashic records, if you believe in them. Uranus could also be like the internet. Uranus is seen as being a planet of waves and frequencies, and something that you can tune into. Uranus was the god of the sky. And so everything, all the frequencies, all the energies get picked up by Uranus. And if you look at Uranus, like the symbol for Uranus, it looks like an old-fashioned satellite, or it looks like not a Pac-Man. What is it? Like a space invader. We get these ideas of outer space, of communications, of technology, and how they all fit in with us. Uranus, where he shows up in your chart, is also showing where you're looking for freedom, independence, and to be like to be in your natural design. Uranus really shows us how different we can be. Uranus shows us what our superpower is, like what we were gifted with. So Uranus really does represent a lot. And I guess, in terms of our superpowers or our skills and talents, our birthright, and what makes us a bit different, that is like a different, unique consciousness. I really think that the higher harmonic of Uranus is the consciousness and how it can change in a blink of an eye. Uranus is also like an earthquake or a tornado. It whips things up, lifts things up, and then drops them down. Uranus shows us where we might feel a sense of anticipation. Something is about to change. All of the psychic people feel the Uranus stuff way ahead of it happening. We are anticipating change. We can feel it. It's a new vibration that we pick up on. And then all of a sudden something can just change. It can stop, and then something new comes along. So the moon is absolutely picking up all of these energies, really sudden, emotional outbursts, because obviously the moon is about our emotions and our psyche. Our insecurities will be picked up by the moon. The moon can really show us where we're uncertain about things, where we might be a little bit immature about things. The moon can show us where we have yet to grow up and grow beyond something, like the things that trigger us, and obviously people can be triggered of all ages, but you really see it in small children, as they're learning to make sense with the world. Something happens, they lose their shit. They don't know what's going on. It suddenly something doesn't compute, and they get over emotional, overtired, and then they can't quite function. Now, we're all like this, we're all big babies, actually. We all have these moments where like our inner child wakes up and suddenly gets quite disturbed. And this is the moon. In a lot of astrology, the moon shows the child, the inner child, and it also shows the public opinion. And so, the public opinion here in a conjunction with Uranus is really showing a deep level of change, a change in consciousness, a great uncertainty, great emotional outbursts. And so this is big. Now, the sun is obviously already in an opposition with Uranus. In fact, the sun is coming into this Uranus all week. Right now, I think the sun is roughly around 19 degrees. It's already in the opposition, and it's just tightening as this week goes on. And so the sun in the sign of Scorpio, to my mind, if you think Scorpio is fixed, it's water, it can show stagnant identities because it's to do with the sun. The sun is very much about what we identify with. We have some stagnant beliefs about ourselves or about the world. We have positions and an identity that we absolutely are fixed and focused on, and everything we see through the lens of our identity will come across in that very strict and focused way, and very blinkered. We can't see beyond that. And so anyone that is presenting something different to that is going to seem crazy and possibly dangerous. The sign of Scorpio is known for secrets. It's also known for, not trusting people. Like the sign of Scorpio, it takes the traditional Scorpio energy. They can be quite suspicious. So imagine if your identity is fixed and emotional right now, and getting more and more erratic as the sun is coming into the opposition with Uranus, and you're starting to see people around you that maybe think differently to you, you could very well be feeling suspicious of their motives and wondering what's going on. And, the Scorpio, if you think of the scorpion, they have a sting in their tail. So they have defensive maneuvers. So what I'm seeing here is a defensive reaction coming in right the way through this week and getting more and more acute as the full moon comes in. And of course, this week, the moon is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger coming into the full moon. So we are not in our right minds right now. If we are fixed in an identity and also really triggered or triggerable in our emotions, we're not much good to anybody. We can all be manipulated by someone saying just the right thing to set us off. We all have this in us. And so it's really worth understanding that this is one of the energies that seems really abundantly present right now in this week ahead. And I think it's great that Venus is in the sign of Capricorn as this is coming in, because that's giving us a modicum of discernment. It's giving us a cooling off period, which is fantastic. And Mercury in a square to Saturn is also cooling us off, but it is making us a bit sharp in our communications. We've got this Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury T-square, so the ongoing square between Jupiter and Saturn, which I think is two very different forms of authority showing up, not in any kind of congruence, showing up with tension around them. And then there are people talking about it and having reactions to it. So there is a lot of stuff going on. One thing I do like about this particular energy that's growing up in this week ahead and coming into the alignment of this full moon is we've got the Sun and Neptune and Mars in a trine. Now, the Sun and Mars in a trine I find actually quite useful because, it helps us grow in confidence. It helps us want to take action. It helps us want to get our life right. It's helpful. We're not likely to sit too still. I think, we may well get busy and, the Sun in a trine to Neptune can show us wanting peace and wanting to come into an unconditional regard for each other. Even if we don't like people, we can still regard them or have respect for them, so it's also showing that we might be coming into a time of greater creativity. And actually I think creativity is on the spectrum of love, anywhere where we are able to use words and images and ideas and weave them together, I think is a creativity. It comes from I think it's a higher harmonic. It's the more we can open ourselves up to possibilities, and I think to love. Like, why would we even create something if we weren't trying to improve things? I think the Sun and Neptune are quite helpful. Now, Neptune's going to come into this reading a little bit more, and Neptune is known as a higher harmonic of creativity and love, but it's also, if it's negatively impacted, also known for deceptions, which I think is like there are two sides. I've put this coin in to remind me. Every planet has two sides. I feel that every planet is on a spectrum of something, and it has a really positive sort of expression and a negative expression. And Neptune here has the positivity. It has the potential to transform us into more poetic, more understanding, more empathic people who are willing to kind of have courage and to flow in empathy and to flow with the sense of possibility to connect with people. But the negative side of the creativity of Neptune is we might want to lose touch with people. We might want to, there's something delusional and deceitful about Neptune. It can be a bit of a trickster. It can absolutely be deceptive and show where we lose. So, there is this gain and also lose with Neptune, which I will be coming to as we go through this. With, Jupiter in an opposition to Mercury, that's going to become much bigger news as we go further into the month. Mercury is going to go into a full opposition with Jupiter, really showing that there is this, it's crazy actually. I think that Gemini and Sagittarius are the two signs really to do with knowledge and knowledge sharing and learning. And so, the sign of Gemini is ruled by Mercury, as you might know. And so the kind of knowledge that you get with Mercury and Gemini is lots of facts, lots of rationality, understanding how things fit together in tight little patterns. People with a strong Mercury Gemini kind of energy, they remember things, they're able to quote things, they're able to flick through many different articles and put together a bit of a storyline, and they really, people with a strong Gemini really like to learn and really like to know what's what and to quote what's what. And they tend to favor rationality and short bursts of knowledge. The sign of Sagittarius, which is opposite Gemini, is about knowledge, but it's about higher knowledge. Not to say that the Gemini knowledge isn't worth having, because it is, but the Sagittarian knowledge is slightly more woolly. It's contextual. It might be philosophical, political, religious, spiritual. However, it tells a story. It tells the overarching story that all the Gemini stuff fits in. So they are all about knowledge, and Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and so you've got Mercury in Sagittarius and Jupiter in Gemini. They're in each other's signs. Neither planet is very strong, and later on this month, as they come into a full opposition, and then Mercury goes retrograde. Everything to do with knowledge and what we know is turned on its head. To me, it feels like just from picking up a small bit of information from news outlets, that have come onto the internet that I've seen. To me, there has been this, I think, an outing, like all of a sudden it's becoming clear that there are different factions blaming each other for the situations we're all in. And knowledge is one of the things that is being like the cause of the war or the cause of the polarity. So there are some people who say, look, we know, we study, we're the rationalists, we're the ones, with letters after our name. We've done all the research. You should listen to us because we're the experts. So there is almost like this expert class right now. And the idea that experts have earned the right to say what happens. And then there are people who have a really good sense of things from real lived experience. And they might not have letters after their name. Some do. But it's a different kind of knowledge. It's a known knowledge. It's an experienced knowledge. And it's a broader knowledge. And also sometimes a deeper knowledge, the sort of more Gemini knowledge, stays within particular parameters. And so we've got these two different types of knowledge. And when you look at voting in America and the then reporting of the voting, what I've heard from MSNBC and also CNN is that they say, well, the opposition don't have the same intelligence as us, and because they can't see what we already know, that's why they voted the way. And so there is this precedent of we are against each other because of the lack of knowledge. Our knowledge is separating us. And so seeing this Mercury and Jupiter opposition in each other's signs, they will both be retrograde soon and in a tighter opposition. I can only see that getting stronger and stronger and stronger until all of a sudden the whole subject of knowledge kind of blows up and kind of tips on its head. To me, this is one of the places where we are falling out right now, is intellectual snobbery, because we all have a point of view. We can all learn. We can all share. And sometimes people learn better when they are not already told that they are not strong enough, quick enough, smart enough, whatever. There are different ways of communicating to all be able to get onto the same page. And there is also, there are many theories that we shouldn't all be on the same page anyway, but at least we can respect each other. What is the healthiest way to share knowledge right now is a big question. Now, this is where I think this ties into Uranus, because Uranus, like I said, is a higher harmonic of Mercury. So it's higher thought, and Uranus is deeply sort of like, there is telepathy, there is the idea of downloads, there is the idea of intuition that comes from Uranus, the sense that we have knowledge from another realm, very much the opposite of a traditional rational sort of Gemini energy, very much the idea that you don't have to be an intellectual to be able to get a download or to be tuned in to what life is showing right now. And so, Uranus up here to me, with the moon, I think is giving us all this incredible intel that we can tune into. And the sun down here in the sign of Scorpio is a sign associated with secrets and also associated with Pluto and the underworld and all things dark that we don't want to fully look at, things underground, things that are hidden. It's all these hidden patterns. And so I think this full moon, in light of the fact that we've got this knowledge war going on right now, I think this full moon could bring about a disclosure of sorts, or a series of disclosures, many shocking, many painful, and I think that is really, really disabling, and could cause some really, really big reactions for people. So really big patterns going on. Now, one of the things that I find useful about this, the timing of this full moon and the patterns, is we've got Pluto in a trine to Uranus and the moon, and also Pluto sextile the sun. Pluto and Uranus have been in a trine for a really long time, and they're going to stay in a trine for quite a while longer. They don't come into this trine very often, and when they do, they're working in that pattern for quite some time. Now, Pluto is very much about control, and Uranus is very much about breaking down the rules and regulations and breaking down those layers of control, or a new form of control that is arising. And so to me, this is really showing we are going through a systemic change of, I was about to say ownership then, sometimes I can't quite find the words. There are different systems of governance right now. And what I think is happening is we're coming to the end of one form of governance and coming into a whole new system, and possibly a whole new series of systems that are coming into play. And again, there are two sides to every coin. We could find that we break down one system to find greater freedom, only to find ourselves in the same situations again. Who knows? We may have a new governance system that is relying heavily on AI to find freedom, which may actually tighten us back up. Like the Internet of Things, whilst I can see the positive applications of it, I can also, as somebody who doesn't want to be wired up, chipped up, examined, followed around town with technology, I really don't like that thought. That doesn't sound very free for me. So, there are lots of different steps that we are moving towards, and lots of things that are breaking down. And I think we are fully in the breakdown phase right now. And I think that's just going to increase. I'll be honest. I think we're going to break down more and more as our systems of governance are changing and adapting according to the will of the people. I think this is a time of people. Now, Pluto in a sextile to the sun as well is describing, I think, people coming into power. Pluto is also about to go into Aquarius next week, literally 4 days after this full moon. And he's going to be in the sign of Aquarius for the next 20 years. Interesting, isn't it? Aquarius, one of the rulers is Uranus. So we've got a very Uranian full moon, just as Pluto, that is connected to Uranus, is about to go into Aquarius. So these are times of change, system change. It's a changing of the guards. There is something new and inventive and innovative about the energies of both Aquarius and Uranus. So that is also coming into this. This is something new. We are into completely new territory. And I suspect that's another reason why so many people are feeling quite fearful. So again, this is, I think, people coming into a sense of their own power rather than, that sort of Saturnian, Plutonian energy that we've been under for all of our lifetime. So yeah, some really, really big themes here. Let's look a little bit deeper. Now, if you are interested in a full moon reading for your particular star sign, please do check out the week ahead forecast for the 11th of November to the 17th. There are chapters you can whiz ahead and get your reading. And I mentioned quite a few of these things, like Venus in Capricorn, these positions, and also Mercury and Saturn. So there's a lot going on. That should give you quite a good idea. But where I want to have a look now is the midpoints, because obviously we've got the moon and Uranus. We've also got Pluto. And like I said, Uranus and Pluto are going to be in a trine for quite some time. And they are bringing in that innovative energy of change and transformation and modernity, and the sudden breakdown of anything that is not free, that is not liberating. This is a really kind of new energy that we're coming into. Now, the midpoint of these two is actually 27 degrees in the sign of Pisces, which is exactly right now where Neptune is. And actually over the next few months, as Pluto moves forwards and eventually Uranus moves forwards, we will find that Neptune stays at that midpoint pretty much the whole time. It will come slightly off it and go back on it. Neptune is also going to be making his own transitions into the sign of Aries next year. So this midpoint is interesting. I think the midpoint is showing how Uranus and Pluto are going to express themselves, how we're going to really experience the potential of this transformation. Now, Neptune isn't this Neptune midpoint isn't just formed by Uranus and Pluto. It's also formed by the moon and Pluto. It's also that midpoint. It's also the midpoint between Venus and Jupiter. It's right there. I'll show you right now, in fact. So this is quite a handy little graphic. And if you ever use astro.com, which I recommend that you do, you can bring up midpoints for your birth chart, or any chart. So here down the midline, you've got all the planets and angles. So you've got the ascendant and the midheaven, for instance. And of course, we've got Pluto here, and we've got Uranus here. And if we go to this point here, there's the midpoint. It's at 27 degrees in the sign of Pisces. And look, there's where Neptune is, at 27 degrees in the sign of Pisces. If you have a look at the Moon Pluto midpoint, it's 26 degrees 58. So it's really almost 27 degrees in the sign of Pisces. This is a very sensitive part of the chart. And then let's go further, and you'll see that Jupiter and Venus, so Venus here and Jupiter, there's the midpoint at 26:59 in the sign of Pisces. So again, dancing around that 27 degrees. So what are those midpoints about? Let's have a look at this. So we've got Pluto, Uranus, Pluto, Moon. Where have I put it? Right, let me just go forwards. I've lost my slide. Here we go. And I want to thank cafeastrology.com. This is another good place for research. They've taken a lot of time and trouble. They've gone to a lot of effort to put a lot of information. It's a pretty good directory. And on Cafe Astrology, I looked up earlier about the midpoint energies. And so the Uranus-Pluto midpoint energy is about sudden changes, transformations, or mutations, explosions, bounds, to leap, explosions, changes and transformations which start suddenly. The development starts with a jar or a shock. So, this full moon, the sort of combined energy of Pluto and Uranus with the moon really setting it off, is creating sudden changes, transformations, explosions was mentioned twice, starting suddenly, shocking, jarring, and its development. We've also got the Moon and Pluto midpoint, which this is interesting. Fickleness of female persons. I said earlier that the moon can represent children and also the public. The moon can also show women, because the sun is male and moon is female. So fickleness of female persons, development of the brain and the glands, cognition, public changes, unstable condition of the public, hourly changes, obviously because the moon moves fast, changes which come and go fast, women or persons, the public who change, who show a different face, who change their character. So we have public changes going on, which are transforming us in a sudden way and possibly explosive way, definitely in a shocking way. And it could be something to do with females. Now, obviously, I know in the States, one of the highly contested issues that people were talking about round the clock was the idea of women's rights and reproductive rights. And that was one of the things I really saw on the agenda, like the idea of female things. Another thing that I noticed a lot of chatter around on news outlets of all different types was that the female voting strategy was markedly different than it has been in other years, and that more females there was a much different, I think more females, in particular, females of a particular status in life, and also, like educational status, more females voted democratically than, for Republicans. So, there is a lot more, I imagine there's a lot more female discontent with the election results right now. And also, interestingly, Kamala, a female. So, there is a very strong idea of female issues going on, which are linked to sudden changes, transformations, things are whipping up quite suddenly. So, that's just something to observe. And then the final one, which is Venus and Jupiter as a midpoint. this midpoint is usually a place of happiness. This is a great midpoint because both Venus and Jupiter are known as benefics. So they're quite happy and merge beautifully. So their midpoint is about happiness in love, lover's bliss, rapture or joy, goldsmiths, fortunate in love. So I also get that what is going on right now for the moon, Pluto and Uranus, and the movements that are being expressed right now are also movements that should bring us back to love and happiness and that bliss, that joy, that rapture, that fortune, and also like goldsmiths. I've heard a few different references to coming into a golden age. Lots of people talking about that at the moment. So it's interesting that gold is mentioned here. The idea of affluence, or the idea of things getting easier and more graceful. So it's interesting that we've got these two very jarring and upset and irritated energies, and also at the same time, whatever is going on is leading us to a greater feeling of joy. Or that's maybe what's underpinning it. Is it that everybody is really coming from a place of love? Who knows? I actually think if you go underneath everybody's viewpoints and hard set opinions, that if you go underneath and say, so tell me why this issue with reproductive rights is so important to you right now. On the surface, we all think, oh, it's because it's the right thing to do. But actually underneath it, most people would say something like, well, it's about safety, or it's about, like there are much deeper things. And you could ask any person, most people's reasons for doing anything come from a good place, but you just have to ask the right questions. When you go underneath everybody's kind of psychology, most people are trying to avoid fear, avoid danger, and feel safe and secure. And so, people might do it in a different way, but that's not because any of us are fundamentally wrong. So maybe this underpinning this idea of love and joy is what's underpinning. Maybe this is where we could aim for, or maybe this is where we might be going through working through these conflicts. I am an optimist, I have to say. So now, given that Neptune is so important as a midpoint, I thought it would be interesting to have a look at that. I already, in the earlier forecast I did for the week ahead, looked at the Sabian symbols for the moon, the sun, and Uranus in this week ahead. And I will add this to the end of the video, so if you choose to look at it, you can. But the Neptune midpoint, which is about how things are being expressed, is a lovely one. Interesting, a fertile garden under the full moon. This shows enjoying nature, the fruits of your life, your country, your culture. There's a sense that we have all that's needed and emotions can be running high. The fertile garden signifies you have the things you need at your disposal. This symbol has a strong clairvoyant sense to it, with the ability to pick up on subtle energies and life forms in the environment. You'll get a lot of opportunities to enjoy the moment, but keep a sense of equilibrium. As soon, the energy will be on the wane and you'll have to get back to more practical everyday tasks. Fullness and fertility, peak experiences, brilliantly active subconscious life cycles, the effects of the moon, Mother Nature's gifts, the full moon, nature sprites, gardens. Now, the negative side of this particular Sabian symbol, jealous protection, too many possibilities, psychic confusion, difficulty sleeping or shutting down the mind, missed opportunity, night shadows. Now, this is interesting. I really think this describes the sort of Neptune energy, actually, because at some level it is this psychic, clairvoyant love fest. Neptune is all about the creativity and the rising up of our awareness so that we can sense more and connect to more and be in communion with more. That is unconditional love, isn't it? Like being able to unconditionally commune with all that is. And yet the very sort of negative side or energy of Neptune is this idea of there being too much, this overwhelm, this confusion. And of course, when we're confused, it's very easy for us to be lied to be deceived, and for us to lie without even realizing it. You know, we might be lying to ourselves. It's also very difficult to shut down. And it is like being in a bit of a nightmare and feeling that sense of loss. Interestingly, I did see this, you know, Neptune, how Neptune can experience can express itself, I think is creative and illusionary. But, you know, some of the negatives are deceptions, ideologies. It's highly spiritual, so ideologies really come into it. You know, it's very very much based on like these great ideas. I think this is also about dissolutions, and in particular right now with Neptune in the sign of Pisces, right at the end of Pisces. You know, as we go through the zodiac, you know, 0 Aries is about the start of our world, or the start of our story, the story of humanity. And as we go through all of these different signs, they're telling the story of humanity. And then as we're coming into the sign of Pisces, it is about the dissolution. It is about the dissolving of the story, the dissolving of the narrative that we've been through. And so seeing Neptune right at the end, and Neptune is going to be crossing over this for the first time in March 2025. So we are actually in the process of all of our ideologies, all of our deceptions, all of our creativity. It's all dissolving right now. And I think that's the difficulty. So, you know, coming back to this energy, this transformative, changing energy about how we live and what it is to be human right now. The confusing part is it's all dissolving, it's all unraveling before our very eyes. And it seems to me that the harder we hold on to things to be like this, because this is the right thing, and if it's not like this, then it's completely wrong. This is out of flow with what's going on in the world right now. You know, this is out of flow with the evolution of the planets. This is out of flow. And so it creates more pain. The more we're holding on rather than going with the dissolution and seeing what comes of it and seeing where it takes us, it feels dangerous. It feels unsafe. I'm guessing, you know, a bit like, you know, a baby coming down the birth canal. You know, it has known safety. It knows where it is. And then all of a sudden, this baby is tight. It's being squeezed. It doesn't know where it's going, or like a caterpillar dissolving, you know, dissolving inside a chrysalis before it turns into a butterfly. It literally dissolves. Its whole body changes. Everything about it changes. It goes through such a metamorphosis. And I think this is what's going on right now, and it's painful. So I think this full moon is absolutely bringing in the energy of dissolution, and why dissolution is important. It's an important part of the process, and that might be why when we're looking at these midpoints, you know, it's bringing up a lot for all of us, and yet it is actually seated in love. It's clearing the decks, so we do actually go into a new story, and we are in this very transitional phase, you know, as we go into 2025. Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus are all changing signs, and you know, these planets are going to be dancing in between their planets, the two planets, for a while, a bit like how, you know, Pluto was dancing in between Capricorn and Aquarius for a while. So we are in this transition. So I wonder what would be helpful for you right now to think about in terms of your life. How, you know, what kind of characteristics do you think are going to help you as we go through a transition, or as you go through a transition? You know, from my perspective, I think the more open I can be, the more, the less attached to the outcomes that I think I want, the less I'm forcing my life to be a particular shape, the more I'm in the flow of things. I think that's going to be probably what's easier. I think it's an impossible task to hold on to our lives exactly as they are right now, whilst the world is changing, because as the world changes, it automatically changes our lives. So this is huge. Now, something else that I didn't mention but I was reminded of it earlier today, or yesterday, when I was chatting to my friend Alexandra, who's a really, really good astrologer, by the way. She's been on the show, Alexandra Jowett from Jupiter Returns. She was just reminding me that we also have an ongoing square between Neptune and the galactic center, which is actually here at 27 degrees. It's not actually on this chart. I didn't put it in. But the galactic center, the center of our galaxy, the center of all knowledge, the center of all the mysteries of life. This is apparently a flipping great big black hole at the center of our galaxy that is pulsing out energy and waves. I've also had conversations with lovely Trassa from Goddess Inspire, a couple of conversations with her about the galactic center as well. So, two top great astrologers, are talking about the galactic center and how it pulses out information that we are all able to get into the flow of. We can all tune into that information, a bit like how, nature tunes into the moon phases, and how we can pick up on these things. We can also pick up on the galactic center energy field. And right now, the galactic center and Neptune are in a square. Now, Neptune is very open and absolutely very, very psychic, very clairvoyant, very much in between the realms of reality. This particular square between Neptune and the galactic center, I think, is really going to be pushing people to question and want to go deeper. There is a sense that there is more to our existence than what we're told, and it feels like the history that's been presented to us suggests that we're at the top of our game. And yet, if you look back in history and you see the pyramids and you see these amazing cathedrals and beautiful towers from antiquity, and you look at those and you think, okay, that doesn't quite make sense. How did we move those great big stones? How did we mine them? How did we do this, that, and the other with primitive tools? Something doesn't quite add up. And so I think there is this sense that there are lots and lots of unanswered questions, and a sense that there is something much greater out there than we are even aware of. And so it is bringing up also this psychic channel of unknowing, unlearning, and a reconnection to something else. And so for that reason, I've also put in the Galactic Center's Sabian symbol, which actually is the Sabian symbol of my birthday, just so you know. But it's called A Splendidly Built Bridge, a heritage of unknown ages, still spans the beautiful and wildly primitive stream. And what this symbol speaks of building bridges between places, people, and events in order to bring them together and add cohesion to society. The bridge implies strength, dependability, and passage to other places. The bridge was built many years ago, and it presents the ability to be able to reach back into time, to reflect on, I can't believe I was just talking about that actually, to reflect on what was important then and what's important now. Often these values are one and the same. Traditional ways of approaching things can lead to the best solutions. There is a linking of people, places, and things with clarity. Note, the Galactic Center is moving on to this degree. We need to act as bridges in order to truly create. Enduring elements of past traditions providing a link with the modern. Reverence for things of worth that stand as reminders of yesterday. Permanence. Getting in touch. I love this. I haven't read this description for quite a while. I've had my attention on other things, but that actually mirrors everything I've been saying so far is, how can we bridge everything? How can we pull everyone together? How can we kind of go through these changes, and know that there is something much bigger afoot, something much bigger and beyond our rational understanding of things, something absolutely quite amazing. So, yeah, I see that there are really great possibilities underneath it all. And this is, to do with the midpoint and the galactic center right now. So this is all really big stuff. But what I want to do now is just to have a look at the asteroids. I think they are a bit grittier. They're certainly quite interesting. So to get the asteroids, I went to serenu.com, as I do each new moon and full moon. Serenu, I think it's SERRE SER Serenu EN crikey SERRENU.com, Serenu. And I think I've got a link in my notes down below. But if you go into Serenu and put in, say, November the 15th, 2024 at the exact time and in the location that you're in, then hit enter, it will put up all of the possible asteroids that are out there and their positions. And you can look for the asteroids that are somehow interacting with your chart or your birth chart. So I was looking for asteroids that were involving the sun and the moon and Uranus. And these are the ones that came up. So the first one is Magdalena. And it's interesting that the moon and Pluto asteroid, the moon and Pluto midpoint has about women. Okay, so this is interesting because we've also got Eris, we've got Magdalena. So Magdalena, witness to the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, widespread belief that Mary Magdalene was a repentant prostitute or promiscuous woman. So women's issues are in a conjunction with the moon at the time of this full moon. So it really wouldn't surprise me if things to do with women are absolutely highly up there on the day of the new moon, the full moon, and all the way through the weekend. To me, that seems like something that's growing. If there are big protests and things that are developing, I really think women are going to be heavily involved in it, which I think is quite different, because you often find a very strong male presence, don't you, at protests and things like that. I think the female energy is going to be stronger. But it's interesting because with Magdalena, you get the idea, that she was somebody who has turned things around. So what I really get from this energy of Magdalena is it's a changing female picture. That we've got the energy of prostitution or the energy of maybe doing things that were out of alignment with our soul's directive, or we were doing something that, there's the idea that, that maybe there was disrepute and then all of a sudden there was a turnaround, this kind of resurrection for Mary Magdalene. It's also interesting that Magdalena is witnessing. So to me, I really get the feeling that A, we are witnessing a change in women, and B, that there is a turnaround of female energy that, I get this feeling that we have an energy shift from maybe angry or unhappy to happy and loving and supportive. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with prostitutes, by the way, just to make that really, really clear. I'm not trying to be judgmental. This is the description, I think, that came up with Wiki, I think. Interesting, like the idea of the witness to crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. So there is also this idea of maybe coming into faith or coming into a belief and witnessing a situation. One thing that I did say in my other broadcast where I was talking about Donald Trump's chart is the first assassination attempt that I think happened on the 13th of July. We had Mars and Uranus together right on the top of his chart, right on his midheaven. Now we've got a full moon right on his midheaven, and women. So to me, it feels like there's a lot of people that are possibly angry at him, like a lot of public angry at him. Then we've got Lempo. Now, I've never put Lempo in, and I saw it and I thought, I don't know anything about Lempo, probably not. But I did a quick search to see what came up. And it's interesting because Lempo is a character rooted deeply in the culture of Finland and Northern Europe. Lempo emerges as a malevolent force, a devilish character that sways the human heart towards temptation and misfortune. And there's also a game called Lempo. So I thought I'd put that in as well. And it says, Lempo draws inspiration from Finnish folklore to create an eerie world that avoids traditional horror tropes. You play as Paul, an ordinary office worker who finds himself mysteriously transported to the mystical forest after a routine day at the office. So I think both of these are interesting. So first of all, we've got possibly a malevolent force trying to sway the human heart towards temptation and misfortune. Interesting, the idea of temptation, because other stories about Mary Magdalene describe, her as being tempted, and often stories about women like Eve, for instance, like the idea that like women get tempted and fall for it. So it's interesting. There's this idea of temptation away from the human heart, but also that we might be waking up and we're ordinary people living our lives, finding ourselves mysteriously transported into another world, where it just doesn't feel very real, and where we're exploring something that feels eerie and particularly and possibly horrific. So it's interesting that Lempo is right in between the moon and Uranus. I really think there are many things right now that are trying to sway the human heart towards misfortune and upset. I think there are so many different ways that we can hear about about being swayed. The news is, as you hear it, it's just kind of horrific. Really, really inciting energies, inciting anger, inciting sorrow, inciting upset. So that's interesting. To me, Lempo is an accelerant of the energies of the moon and Uranus, and that Magdalena could be, females getting involved, but it could also be females witnessing the crucifixion or the change of what's going on right now. There could be women waking up and saying, hang on, look, like we are all at odds with each other. This can't be what we're meant to be doing. To me, this is saying actually that women coming together is possibly what we need. The last one then, Eris. Now, Eris, she's not actually in a conjunction with these guys. Eris is actually in the sign of Aries, but she's at 24 degrees. And she's the goddess or the energy of discord, chaos, and disruption, stirring tensions and pushing for necessary change, the need for asserting oneself, standing up for justice, and challenging power structures. Now, the story of Eris does also talk about how she was left out, how she was excluded, how she wasn't, how she wasn't honored, and the kind of anger and the hurt and the triggering in her character that she just went to the dark side. She went into chaos and destruction and discord, like really, really going for it. So, she's in a semi-sextile to this full moon. She's in an inconjunct or a quincunx to the sun. So she is adding in, she's an accelerant to discord, chaos, and disruption around the time of the full moon. So it's interesting that we do have females here, given what we were talking about earlier. So yeah, there you go. They are some of my observations of the astrology, a deep dive, a different kind of look at things. I am going to post the part of my full moon bits from my forecast, just so if you want to look at it, you can look at it easily. I really think this is a time for us to keep our heads and to observe and to witness, but not necessarily get involved. Not because we're uncaring, not because it's not important, but actually I think seeing things through our heart, seeing things through our intuition, connecting into nature, connecting into the true spirit of being who we are, I think is more important. I think these are treacherous times where we can be sold ideas, and those ideas are almost like a mind virus that take root, and then they influence us and they almost whip us up into a frenzy. And I really don't think that is how we come back into peace. I don't know how we come back into peace, other than maybe we start being peace. We start being peaceful. We start being love. We start being loving. can we rebuild humanity whilst we hold half of humanity responsible for what's going on in our lives right now? I don't know if we can. So yeah, a lot of things to think about. And, you know, this is something that I'm going to be thinking about a lot over this week ahead. And even though I've got this fly buzzing around my head, I just want to whack him. But it's so funny. I'm talking about peace and love and whatnot, and how we can come into it whilst I'm thinking about killing a fly. The hypocrisy of what's going on. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was useful. If I can be of any help, just get in touch. But sending you loads of love wherever you are in the world. Take care and catch you another time. Bye for now. Now, just over the next few slides, I just want to show you, out of interest, how this full moon is looking on Donald Trump's chart and JD Vance's chart. Earlier this year, I think I mentioned in a side video that Donald and JD Vance have very aligned charts. You know, they are, I mean, when I looked at their charts and looked at the charts of Kamala and Tim, I could see that, you know, Trump Vance is a stronger team than Kamala and Tim, you know, because they are, it's almost like they're working on an apprenticeship. You know, that there is something that's going to be handed over, whereas, you know, the sort of Kamala and Tim, to me, seemed a little bit into their own things, and they kind of met in the middle a little bit. You know, when you see the similarities here, I think you'll see, wow, their charts are absolutely on a similar mission. And you notice that where you see like relationships, you know, when you look at married partners, you know, that they might have shared angles, and that's what Donald and Vance have. So here is President-elect Donald DJT's chart. So the full moon is right on his midheaven, like exactly on his midheaven, and the sun is exactly on the IC, the part of his home, which is also his safety, his anchor. So whatever is going on in terms of shocks and the world, to me, it feels like this is absolutely resonating with his charts. Now, back on the, was it the 13th of July this year, when there was the assassination attempt, that was when Mars and Uranus were right on his midheaven. Now, Uranus can show shocks. You know, I also noticed, and this is something that JD and Donald have in common, is that they have Mars on one of their angles. So Trump's got Mars on his ascendant, and Vance has got Mars, I'll just show you now, on his IC, on the angle to do with his home. So they've both got a Mars angle, and their angles are very, very square. So this full moon with Uranus on Trump's midheaven is also exactly in a square with his Mars on his ascendant. So to me, there is something very big happening. Now, is that something big that could hurt him? Given that, you know, the last time, you know, like, you know, Mars and Uranus on here were exact on the day of the assassination attempt, the first assassination attempt. I don't know. Thankfully, Mars has moved away somewhat. Something else that's also very strong in his chart, and this is why, you know, I didn't do a prediction video as to who I thought was going to win, but I mean, this is a very, very strong chart of massive changes and showing a massive leap up or a leap forwards. You know, Jupiter in Trump's chart is on his sun, is on his Mercury, his Uranus, and also on his North Node. There is a rising up, a very sudden rising up. And this is in his 10th house, you know, to do with his status. Now, conversely, you know, this is the other thing. Trump is born at the time of a full moon. So like he knows the full moon energies, you know, that's why so many people have very strong reactions to him. They love him or hate him, a bit like Marmite, you know, which is quite a full moony kind of thing, you know, and it shows a high level of emotions and a higher emotional set point, like not necessarily being flatlined in equilibrium. There's this ups and downs, in the emotional journey. And so on this particular full moon day, Mercury is very, very close to his south node and moon. He's also born on an eclipse, because, where we have a full moon or a new moon in a conjunction with the nodes, that's an eclipse. So like Trump's chart is very, very strong and very, very individual. And right now, and in particular on the day of the full moon, there's something very, very strong happening in his chart. And I don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. This could be that he's about to release information, or that there's a lot of information and stuff going on with him. There's a lot of news going on with him. This is very, very big. There's loads of different things happening. I also noticed the south node is right over his natal Neptune as well. Possibly talking about, like, I always think Neptune can show us, where we might be unboundaried and unguarded. And the south node obviously can show situations from the past. So this could be something to do with past situations coming up, and almost blindsiding him. Now, if I go to Vance's chart, you'll also see the full moon right over his midheaven, and the sun right on his IC, and it's right on his natal Mars. So whatever is going on with Trump is also happening with Vance. So there's, it could be that they're involved in something very, very big that could catapult their careers even further, or that there is a very shocking challenge to their power. But to me, there is something going on. And, like I said right at the start, it feels like there's this anticipatory uncertainty going on between the time of the election and the inauguration. And quickly, I'll just show you, I'll show you the chart of Israel, which I'm only just putting this in because my husband said, "Hey, Steve Judd was talking about this," and he's right. The sun here in the 8th house of the Israel chart is at 23 degrees in the sign of Taurus. The full moon is at 24 degrees, so it's literally just there. And then the Mars of Israel, which is in a square to this, is at 28 degrees by the looks of it, and Saturn at 16 to 17 degrees. So both Saturn and Mars are in a square to the sun. So this full moon is likely to have a big impact on Israel too. So lots going on. Now, I will start the forecast soon, but I just want to, given that there's such a strong energy, to me it feels wrong to not consider what the Sabian symbols might be saying. If you don't know what a Sabian symbol is, I really urge you to have a look at this wonderful website called www.sabiansymbols.com. Essentially, there are 360 meanings. There, in the same way we've got 360 degrees in a circle. If I just go back, for instance, every one of these degrees, say your ascendant is at 23 degrees in the sign of Libra, there is a Sabian symbol that is associated with 23 right the way up to 2359 in the sign of Libra. There is a meaning for it that has been channeled. And every single degree has a different meaning that has been channeled. And there are several versions of the Sabian symbols. I've had a couple of shows with Linda Hill, and this is her website based on her channeled and updated versions of the Sabian symbols. And I think they're really, really beautiful. And her website will allow you to go in and find the symbols. I will just say 24 degrees in the sign of Taurus gets rounded up. Every degree always gets rounded up to the next degree. So we would be looking at 25 Taurus. So the full moon in Taurus is interesting. It's talking, I'll read it out. This symbol shows that there's lots of room to move in this situation, and many things are in the rightful place. You are part of something important. but you're only a small part of something much larger. As everyone works together, you'll be able to create a useful and lasting result that will eventually benefit the whole community. The question is, are you in a balanced state of work and play? Although there's probably a lot of work that needs to be done, fun needs to be given its priorities as much as work and duty. Paying attention to appearances, people living in peace, people taking to the streets, gardens and gardening, work of few for the pleasure of many, the need for maintenance. And where it gets out of control and gets a little bit too much, then we've got a sort of a different look at it, which is like difficulty finding privacy, people continually coming by, having a lot to look after, littering and graffiti, people trashing the property of others. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if a riot or two spring up around that time, and that we see you know, a trashing of property, in particular trashing the property of people that you feel different to. I do see that as like social disobedience, sort of trying to bring the collective down, you know, because there are different ways of having your voice heard, you know, and this is really saying the best way to be heard and be part of something is to play your small part, but to work together rather than to work to denigrate something or destroy something. Much better to work legally and in collaboration together. So that's where the full moon is. And the sun at the time of this full moon is saying this symbol shows being able to see into areas or realms that others generally don't take any notice of. So I was talking about digging into the depths and possibly having things revealed to us. You may find yourself looking for a deeper understanding of situations, and you need to peel away the layers in order to get to the truth of the matter. You may need to employ both the emotions and the intellect. Ask yourself, what do you want to find? And what is being done to reveal the structure or the nitty-gritty of situations? Looking inside for clues, being able to see through the layers into reality helps you to be able to make a diagnosis. Dia, which means by, and gnosis, which means knowledge, diagnosis. Penetrating insight, having the eyes and intuitions to see, evaluations, photographs, radiation, that doesn't bode well, X-ray vision, connecting the dots, finding causes, insight and revelations. So, you know, it could be that we are about to have a lot of new information coming from the depths and suddenly being able to see it. And then we have the interesting scenario of how do we move on from this? You know, do we work together to come to make sense of the information that is revealed? Or are we going to go crazy and hit the streets and start destroying things? You know, to me, that those are the two energies of the Sabian symbols for the sun and the moon at the time of the full moon. But I also wanted to just pay attention to the sun at 25 degrees, which in Sabian symbols is 26 degrees, because that is when the sun is in exact opposition to Uranus. And this is, the symbol implies being able to or having to be in a new territory. Once the new place has been found, there is a need to acclimatize, quickly adjust and settle in. This new territory can be in a physical, emotional, spiritual framework, whichever you need to feel at home in an inner and outer sense. You may have a feeling of a creeping sense of unease if you find it hard to relax in the new environment, or that the rug may be pulled from under your feet. I think that's what I'm talking about. It feels like nobody has that sense of certainty. And so what this is talking about on Sunday the 17th is that the sooner you can find a sense of settling and calming and feel at home, the sooner you can feel that, the better off you'll be. And you might need to prioritize that to be able to function. So you may also be somebody who moves often in life, sometimes before you were able to get a sense of belonging or having friends. However, there is likely to be a pioneering or venturing spirit. So it's settling in, concerns with territory, immigration. Again, this is pretty big. Immigration, tents, shelter, cohabitation. camp, squatters, respecting boundaries, reservations, migration. You know, they are very current, very sort of current themes right now. So again, if you're living near the border, I don't think around that time I would want to be around somewhere where there all of these words and things are, you know, I would want to be way away from that area at that time. You know, it also says moving into or invading people's territory, putting up with things when one should move, barging in, having to compromise living space, arriving unannounced. So I wonder if there's going to be something really big going on around the border. Excuse me. You know, that's quite a strong message. But, you know, if you're in the process of moving, or if you've had to shift in the way you're seeing things right now, you know, this is still an important message. You know, how can you settle in your new place? How can you make sense of it? The final thing is, I just want to see what Uranus is indicating in terms of the Sabian symbol. And actually, this is about using your voice. So I'll read it out. Being able to use one's voice, words, songs, poetry, and culture to sway the minds and hearts of others. One can sway others to achieve a desired result. There is no guarantee of total success, but you must act if you want any chance of succeeding, and you need to put your heart and soul into the performance. The worst that could be damaged is a little ego. So think positively and play your role with enthusiasm and passion. Music can lift the spirits, and words of poetry and love can be healing. Shared feelings, love or passion may result. Being in tune with another, soulmates, passing fancies, having your voice heard, knowing how to deliver a message in order to influence others to make decisions. So, you know, the Uranian full moon side is really talking about working together and using your voice, and not going into the destruction, you know, but it's working together. And then the sun is in this is looking at the coming into a deeper knowledge, the revelations, the penetrating insights, and with an eye to things going on in terms of our territories and where we put our boundaries and borders. And so, yeah, what I really see is there's something massive going on, and these fit into the charts of Trump and Vance, and also Israel, and obviously have things to do with borders, territory, and deep penetrating insights. Yeah, so this is a very, very strong time, suffice to say. Before I go on to the individual forecast, I just want to put a massive shout out to everyone that supports this channel with your time, your treasure, your talent. And these guys here, bless you all. You've made donations, bought me a coffee, or, you know, subscribed to support me on a monthly basis. I really, really appreciate you. You make this happen. So thank you very much. And if you wanted to, there are details in the description box below as to how you can reach and support me.